Hey all, yeah. So I seen this. It was sent to me. This is not the first wild ass banana piece of shit take she's had since the time of. Every time I said this before, and I'm gonna say it again. And since, well, you know what? Let me say it, because fuck her. Since she always want to have my fucking name in her mouth. All right, boom. They've been for a year on some right-wing bullshit. I want to let the record reflect. These people have never been as fucking progressive as people have let them masquerade and begin to believe in the first place. But she's been on this propaganda bullshit ass takes. Her and Jenk been running this dribble for about a fucking year now. And since they came up with this bullshit, let me explain to Anna. Okay. Clearly, you don't understand what cisgender means suddenly, right? Or suddenly your brain don't fucking work. But maybe you don't understand what gaslight means, because I think you have it misconfucking-screwed. Gaslighting would be making an entire platform where you recognize where you, Miss Mamas, verbatim went on your platform repeatedly and said you recognize these talking points as right-wing bullshit, non-issues. No one is calling you a pregnant person. You ain't been able to identify this imaginary person that called you a pregnant person fucking yet. You said that. And then perpetrated like you don't fucking remember you said that when you decided to come out and now adopt those right-wing talking points, because for whatever reason you must feel like you hit a glass ceiling on the left. Whatever you think is looking for you out there on the right, you want to, that's where you want to be. So now all of a sudden you are adopting those talking points and you mad at the rest of us because we point out that you've had a different position. No, you're gaslighting us. You are the one gaslighting us, suddenly acting like you don't fucking understand what the problem is when you were one of, according to y'all, let y'all tell it, leaders of the left, one of the main ones putting out that fucking talking point. And quite frankly, let's talk about this. You seem to not have anything to fucking do. For all this crime that's rampant around your building, bitch, put on a fucking costume and go act like a superhero and stop talking about the rest of fucking us. Because every time I look, your name, you have my name in your mouth, leftist mafia, this, blah, 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 blah. You make bad, shitty, bullshit fucking takes every day. I literally only fucking see y'all in relation to bad fucking takes. And I don't say anything because I don't give a fuck. And quite frankly, I've said this from time. This right here was a deliberate propaganda. I said this. We had no business giving her all that fucking grace when she jumped out the window with the tweet because it was on fucking purpose. She did it because she wanted us talking about it. She did it because she wanted to ingratiate herself with the right. The reason why she wanted to piss off and go at and attack all the other leftist commentators, including people who are personal friends, like all the Emma Viglins of the world, is because she needs to create the appearance to the right wing she's trying to ingratiate herself with, that, oh, the left is, she needs to separate herself apart from us. And what better fucking way to do that than to go at everybody and to fight with everybody and to keep having my black ass name in your fucking mouth. Let me explain this to y'all. I don't care for all of this. Like, Anna, let me be fucking clear. Keep my name out your mouth. The only reason why anybody even mentioned you, because I don't even think you matter. I don't even give a fuck about your white-centered view in the world. And also because you keep your Armenian, but they keep saying I'm white passing. Whiteness is a construct. Maybe you should read a fucking book before you present like you're the queen of the fucking leftist liberal movement. It's a construct. Am I looking at a white blonde woman? Is that how you walking through the earth? White lady. And oh, now you want to act like, oh, they're the ones that are racist because they assumed when I started peddling propaganda that I was talking about black people. So y'all are the racists, and that really what really bothers me. Girl, get the fuck out of here. You know what
the civil war between the boutique professional managerial class leftists have been entertaining. That clip was the first time I've seen it, and it's very interesting. They said this TYT has been on this nonsense for a year. For a year now. I'm like, for a year now, huh? And there's this meltdown, this civil war. You see the PMC left eating themselves, and as actual real Marxist, leftist, revolutionaries, advocates of the proletariat, we just can laugh and point and learn lessons from their insignificant, deeply unserious spouts, because they're having this big meltdown crisis moment over TYT. Over what? Over social issues? That's what did it.
Yeah.
You guys see how it's the issues that the Democratic Party put front and center. That's the red line. I say this is not important, but I will say the breaking point should have been when they was pro-war. They were pushing Russiagate. They advocated for voting for Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden. That's not the breakup point. Anna Kasparian going on a rant about
that is so true.
That's the red line. Very, very interesting, right? It shows how unserious they actually are in a lot of ways. This is the red line. Because we've been calling these people out for a while, but it's bad when we do it. But it's good when they call out TYT because they do it on Democratic Party terms. Anna Kasparian's cringe takes on trans issues and social issues, those are cancelable takes. But from what I heard, Anna said stuff that's kind of right in the middle of a line
Mm-hmm.
Midwestern, socially conservative, working class, Midwestern, like people I'm around. Like there are a lot of people that I know in my personal life that are great people in my personal family that will say shit that will get them canceled on Twitter. They say shit about social issues that maybe get them canceled. They're religious, they're more socially conservative. So this is my question for the Olayemi left, the Vanguard left. Who are you fighting for? Because there's a ton of people that live in Missouri, in red states, that are black, that are working class, that are socially conservative Latinos. Are you canceling them? Are they cast out of the movement if they say one bad thing about the trans movement? Another thing a lot of people don't talk about is the evangelicals in Brazil. You guys know the people who support Lula? These people are socialists, they are communists, but they also deeply religious. These are poor black Brazilians, right? They are not for gay rights. Are you canceling them? Or are we canceling Lula supporters who are socially conservative? Lula is socially conservative. You guys know that? So I'm asking you guys, why are we drawing the line on where you guys drawing the line on these things? Why are these weird fights being picked over social issues? But we've been calling TYT out for their pro-war bullshit,
Right.
and then we was drama seekers when we was doing that. But now it's worth the fight now, right? But sorry, Colin. There are a lot of things. I'll pass it to you now.
No, you're good. But it's funny because I know people who are gay, and even they have kind of mentioned to me, why is this trans issue getting so much attention? This is what gay people I've talked about with them. So it's just nothing more to me. It's a distraction because especially with the Democrats, they don't have anything else to talk about. They can talk about the economy because that's shit. They can't talk about anything tangible that they're going to offer the working class because that's shit. And right now they want to avoid all these strikes that are about to happen. Hopefully UPS is actually going to put their foot down and actually make moves as far as striking by the end of the month. I doubt you're going to see mainstream media talking about that. But we're going to talk about, and not to say that trans issues aren't important, but that shouldn't take over, especially what people have been talking about as far as economic issues. That should be the priority of everybody right now. Because right now, especially with student loan debt, about to start up come fall, people are not going to have any money. And given people have been, I would argue that we've been in a recession, but people and economists are now saying that, we're just going to get there. And once we're there, everyone by this time next year is going to be in a world of hurt. That should be the focus right now and not, this is just nothing more than a distraction to me.
I explained this concept before, and I'll explain it for new viewers. Fighting for your rights, fighting for your ability to live how you want to live, is as legit as a struggle as there is. What's the difference between that, a fight for your rights, which is once again as legit as it comes, and a culture war? If you're gay, you're trans, to me it makes sense that you talk about these issues, right? What make no sense to me, and never makes sense to me, is why there are some white, conservatives, some white guy in Kentucky, where there's maybe 4 trans people in the entire state, right? But that's if you look at their timeline, that's the only thing they talk about, though. Only thing they talk about is pronouns, the trans issue. You're a white American. You live in a Christian conservative community. Maybe one guy in a closet within a 100-mile radius of you. But you tweet about the trans issue all the time. You talk about the trans issue all the time.
And
that's a culture war because you're fighting to influence culture. You guys see the problem there? You're fighting to influence culture instead of minding your own goddamn business. Go ahead, Colin.
I'll say this real quick. If you're talking about trans issues in terms of the intersectionality that there are in economic issues, then that would be one thing. You can talk about how trans people have needs for healthcare. You can talk about how trans people have needs, as far as violence, especially trans people of color. You can make that connection there. You can talk about how trans people need connections as far as job security or housing, because, as you know, trans people definitely go through those issues. But you never hear, it's just more this idea of talking about trans issues in isolation versus how does these issues, trans issues, relate to issues that I think more commonly everyone can get on board with? We still have issues as far as healthcare. We still have issues as far as housing. We still have issues, especially if you're a person of color, with violence, especially in terms of how it relates to the police. If you're able to make those issues and make those connections, then that'll be one thing. But it's like, what I'm hearing is, oh, trans issues in terms of like blockers and my rights and all, like that's to be assumed, but never in terms of the how does this impact people, which I think for many people that might give them more bearing if you're able to relate to the economics. But that's, you never see that, especially in these spaces, or there's not that connection as far as how can you make these issues in relation to what we've been talking about on the left forever. It's always in the case of this isolatory / theoretical stance of trans issues, and never in terms of practically how can we have trans issues be in part of what we've been talking about on the left as far as economic issues from the jump.
Now, to me, and I made my stance clear, and I was actually on some podcast not too long ago. I need to air it while I was having a conversation about this. And I was like, to me, it was clear that the ruling class picked this issue, like any other social issues, to drive a wedge and make workers fight each other. And knowing this, and that's why I approach this issue with that in mind. That's why I don't understand the boutique left who falls for it. Like to me, it's clear this is being used as a culture war divider, distraction issue. And that stance is consistent with the stance I have earlier. I think people should mind their fucking business, right? So you have a lot of people on the left that fall for the establishment trick of picking this issue as the dividing point. Why are you guys allowing this issue to be the dividing point? But you guys are okay with being like Olayemi was friendly with Anna Kasparian just a few months ago when they was talking about criminal justice.
Right.
But that despite Anna Kasparian's previous anti-blackness or previous anti-war positions, but anti-blackness don't count. Being pro-war don't count, but the Democratic Party tells you that the trans issue is important. So they pick that and they're like, all right, we need everyone to get this arbitrary issue correct. And I'm not saying
it's the Southern strategy. It's the Southern strategy reimagined. That's all this is. It's like, an issue like race at the time when they were using the Southern strategy, at the genesis of it, they've been using it for a long time, but it's the Southern strategy where it's like, we know we live in a racist society, so let's gin up some racism out of people by using some sort of fear tactic about Black people. This is the same exact thing where you have a marginalized group that is simply being used on both sides. I'm talking about on the sort of white professional managerial side. They don't really care about these marginalized issues. They only care about them in the terms of sort of having debates, of having these arguments to prove like virtue signal, oh, I'm the best this, when none of them is really willing to go out and do the work, have the fight, get on the ground to get those actual things. It's just a matter of argument.
It's an excuse for them not to do that, CJ. This is a way for them to block the community, because I make my opinion on this very clear. But as I had conversations with many people who bring this up, I make the point to them that, hey, don't you think this is being used as a divider? And I'm like, this is ridiculous. And I make my argument from that position while educating people without doing this nonsense where they canceling people. And it's like this red line, no discussions allowed. And that's just what it is, where there's no discussion allowed, no hedging of positions. If you either repeat the Democratic Party approved line on this, or you're actually canceled. And that's what's going on. That's why the feds push this out so much, because they acknowledge that this is a divisive issue and they're using this to divide the workers. I feel like as people who have revolutionary discipline, we should be able to spot that out and have our disagreements on this issue and talk about it, and not allow the establishment to be successful in dividing us using this issue. We should be actually caring about issues of the proletariat, the stances on the police, supporting the Democratic Party, supporting the Ukraine war, which all these NATO leftists do. But that's not the red line. Why they're not on the red line? Because the Democrats didn't establish that. They don't want that to be a red line of proletariat. They want fucking divisive culture war issues to be the red line, despite the fact I made earlier. What's your guys' answer to this question? What do you do to people I know in my family who I've seen them say stuff about trans issues. I'm like, yikes, right? But I know they're not bad people. They're just socially conservative. They grew up religious. And I got a lot of criticism of that. Mm-hmm. But if your movement building strategy is to say, fuck you, I'm not fighting for you no more. I don't want to movement build with you no more. You are deplorable. Because that's the TYT left. That's the Olayemi left strategy. Anyone who don't agree on 100% on every single social culture war issue, you are exonerated, you are canceled immediately.
But they'll give them a pass when it comes to something extraordinary like Palestine or like war. But let me ask both of you this question, or let me insert this idea. TYT is losing viewership. They're losing the ability to communicate or to keep engaged people like us, and maybe a little bit further to our right. Maybe we're a little bit further left than anybody than their audience is, but they are clearly losing a segment of the population that they used to have. So they're now courting they're pivoting is all they're doing. This is the Jeffrey Katzenberg money showing up in their policy. So my question is, do you think it's a coincidence that Jeffrey Katzenberg gave them $20 million and now several years later, they're just slowly made this pivot? Because I don't think that's a coincidence. This is just Jeffrey Katzenberg getting his, some results, some dividends on what he invested in. So, but what do either of you think of that?
No, the fact that, and we've seen this, even in our space, that the trap that many of us could fall into is that, unfortunately, and I say this all the time, you never make money doing the right thing, even in this space. And when you start shifting, I wouldn't even say shift to the center, because when you start, the money is where you start making the shift to the right. Mm-hmm. And you see, even with TRIT now, that's what they're starting to do. The fact that they've had, Matt Gaetz on like a few months ago, and the fact that now Anna, in her interview, she was like, "Oh, now I'm willing to talk to more people on the right. I'm willing to talk to Jeff Shapiro and all those other characters, but she's not willing to talk about." And you notice even what she said. She said, she's willing to talk with them, but she's not willing to talk with people like us who are more left than her, because she says, according to her, "Oh, I'm afraid that I will say the right thing and I will step in it because I am not as well versed on the issues that she should be of importance to her." And even with Olayemi called her out as far as trans issues. Olayemi spent time with her and Jen talking about police abolition, right? She didn't call out Anna and Anna said in that interview, "I don't give a fuck about police abolition." But she went after her regarding trans issues. So it's kind of like, but when you start making the shift to the right, that's where you're going to make the money. And I think this is Jeff Katzenberg basically making a return on his investment at this point. I think it's been very clear, and it just kind of shows, how really the idea of TYT going after Jimmy for their allegedness, oh, he's moving to the right, and now they're actively doing that, but that's okay.
It's kind of projecting. It's kind of them saying, "Look over there as we're moving." You know what I mean? Like if I'm moving right, I'm going to go, look as I'm moving to the right. And maybe that's kind of what they did with Jimmy. Now, our second guest has arrived. Anthony, are you good to go? You ready to get introduced? So let's bring in Professor Anthony Zenkus in. How you doing, Anthony?
Hey, everybody. Hey, Jay. Hey, Nick. Hello, Colin. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Professor.
Thank you. You can call me Anthony.
Okay, will do.
I don't put respect on your name, man. Sometimes you gotta put respect on someone's name. You know what I mean?
Nick usually just calls me Zenkus, so I'm good with that.
Okay.
Okay. Right.
I respond to this comment. I think this is actually a pretty good point. I will acknowledge this. I disagree, Nick. It's solidarity. We shouldn't sacrifice trans issue for the sake of our agenda, same as we don't sacrifice the Palestinian for any issues. And I will say you are absolutely 100% correct. What I am calling for is consistency, because these same people will throw Palestinian rights under the bus and supporting Marianne Wilson, like the Vanguard people on that show, right? And a lot of people was friends with Anna Kasparian, despite her years of anti-blackness, years of being pro-war. Olayemi was good friends. She was approaching her with kindness, so much. She was so kind that Anna Kasparian brought her on her show. We all know what kind of snowflake she is. So you got to essentially kiss her boots to be allowed in her fear, which Olayemi did enough of. And then now when she made, once again, stances that are very consistent with a lot of socially conservative Americans, not anything that sounds like completely like genocidal, not anything outside the Overton window. She just said common stances that you don't agree with, and that's what make you break. That's why I'm calling for calling out the inconsistencies. And this is what particularly bugged me as a young Black American, because you guys, well, I won't say you guys, not you, TD, but a lot of these Democrats, social Democrats, they are weak on Black issues. Like they won't draw a line on any Black issues. If someone not for reparations, whatever. Right. You know, if you remember, they were telling them during defund the police, oh, you got to ease in defund police. You got to be easy on this. But when it comes to transition, you got to be 100% for the gospel, or you're dead. So you got to know for our issues, ease into it. You guys can't cancel people if they're not exactly where you at. But when it comes for Democrat issues, when it comes from the culture war issues, that's where they push into the divide. So, and I think this statement is true with their statement being true too. I think their statement is correct. I think there's a very good comment. But
I think the way I like to describe it, when our point of view, when we're not saying trans issues aren't important. What I'm saying is, if you're letting the right set the narrative, you get what I'm saying? You're letting them set, okay, this is the top issue. It's like, what is there? One, there's not really a top issue. And if there was a top issue, I would say people literally, you murdering people with when we get to the cluster munition, like that is a huge thing, because that can involve everybody freaking dying in a nuclear holocaust. So, you get what I'm saying? So I think what we're doing, not that trans issues is not important as any other issue that we're fighting for, is that let's not let the right set the narrative so that we can all get riled up about something. We know that all these issues are important, so let's not let them rile us up. And that's essentially sort of my point of view. But let's bring in Anthony. I know you kind of was brought in on this. So we played, while we were waiting to start, we played a video of the Vanguard had Olayemi on, and she's basically, the whole thing that's happened with Anna. I'm sure you've seen what's happening with Anna. She said some things. So we've evolved from talking about necessarily the video. We're just talking about what we see was happening to TYT, this rightward shift. Is it a coincidence following the money from Jeffrey Katzenberg? So now I think you're all caught up. What say you on the topic of what do you have to include?
I mean, it was very obvious to me a few months back when Anna said some transphobic things. She was all upset. She said, I don't want to be referred to as a birthing person. I'm a woman. And the reality is the term birthing person is not something people use in everyday language to describe anybody. It's a medical term. Nobody's ever called Anna that, ever. Okay? And when we pressed her, when were you ever called that? She couldn't come up with the time anybody said, hey, you birthing person. Doesn't happen. Nobody uses that language. It's medical language. And so I said I thought, they're really jumping on the right. But I have to say this. I'm seeing it in different areas. I don't consider TYT the left, although they're perceived to be the left. They're not. Right. But there are people I like who are saying things that are not very inclusive or understanding. And I just, I did a thread on it today. And I do want to throw something out about the trans issue. So, like, first of all, trans people, drag queens, all this stuff has existed for a really long time. Mm-hmm. And recent past, most people didn't have a problem with it. There are kids who are trans. Most people didn't have a problem with that either. And all of a sudden, I think, my perspective, it's just my perspective. Like, we've got a shitty economy. The Biden screwed up so bad. The worst inflation. The worst inflation in 40 years. People are suffocating. They can't afford their bills. The Republicans, if they wanted to run on the economy, could do a cakewalk into the White House in 2024. But they don't have any solutions either.
Right.
They're perfectly happy with the $7.25 minimum wage. They don't want it to be raised. So because Republicans have zero solutions and Democrats also don't have solutions, the Republicans have decided we're upset about the queer community. And all of a sudden, people, literally Rudy Giuliani wore drag a few years ago.
Yeah. Remember Trump used to come out and he used to do events with drag.
Listen, Donald Trump. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'll pass it back to you, Zenkus, and because you're making a great point, and this is a point I made before, and I will continue to make despite culture warriors crying about it. This is manufactured by the media. The media manufactured consent.
Yeah.
The right-wing media started pushing the trans issue out, and all of a sudden people started caring about it again, even though it has most part nothing to do with 99% of people's lives. And people pretend the internet is not a thing, and they'll do this thing like, you see this video, this the direction. It used to never be like this, and I'm like, how do you fucking know? Back then there was no internet. What you guys do? They take the most extreme examples and say, oh, this is a new problem. Like, no. They are trying to manufacture consent to distract you, and I don't think that's a coincidence that they started. Remember, their polls show that people are more class conscious than ever. Socialism more popular than ever. People are against the red-blue game. I don't think it's a coincidence that the establishment on both sides puts this out more now that people are becoming more class conscious. They're more desperate to distract. But go ahead, Zenkus. Sorry.
We have Medea. Have anybody heard of Medea? Have you heard of Bosom Buddies? Tom Hanks used to have a TV show called Bosom Buddies, where the entire show they're dressed up in drag in order to stay at this all-women's apartment.
Right.
Like, this is a joke. Flip Wilson used to dress in drag all the time in his shows, and Flip Wilson was very popular. He was one of the most popular black freaking entertainers at the time.
Yeah,
Flip Wilson. This happens all the time. It's just bizarre. Have you heard of Dennis Rodman? What are they talking about? But go ahead, Anthony.
Yeah, you're saying it perfectly. It was part of our culture, and there was a point when you just thought, like, oh God, RuPaul's Drag Race is one of the #1 shows. It's so mainstream now. But then when I saw Nancy Pelosi walk out on RuPaul's Drag Race, I thought, oh no, this is one of the least popular politicians in our lifetimes is going to ruin drag and make it political, and it should not be in the sense of blue versus red. The thread you're showing, we just celebrated Pride Month, and what was that about? Pride Month was based on the commemoration of the Stonewall riots, and it was black and brown trans women at the front of the lines, literally, physically fighting police for 3 days because they couldn't take it anymore. Read the thread that I did. They were radical. They, in handcuffs, ran away in heels, getting chased by police down the streets. This was a radical movement. And what some erudite people on my thread pointed out, there were a lot of anti-war activists in the queer community at that time involved with Stonewall, as well as communists. It was a big thing. And what happened is, I kind of made a comparison to this. George Floyd was executed in broad daylight by police, right? It was an extrajudicial killing. And next thing you know, we see Pelosi and company kneeling in kente cloth. They did nothing about getting rid of qualified immunity. They gave $37 billion more to the police. They're doing the same thing with the queer community. Democrats don't care about trans lives. Now, there may be Democratic voters who personally do, but the party doesn't. They are virtue signaling. They have the opportunity to pass trans protections and put it in the marriage equality bill, and Democrats who ran the House at the time took it out. So they don't care. My only message, and I think this was the takeaway to other leftists, is don't fall for the culture war. But I have heard too many leftists, some who I like and respect, talk about groomers. Listen, drag queens reading age-appropriate books to 5-year-olds are not groomers. This has been going on for years. Nobody had a problem with it until a bunch of horrible Republicans that don't have literally any solutions to our problems decided to make the culture war an issue. And of course the Democrats love that, because then they don't have to defend their shitty record on the economy, their shitty record on censorship, their shitty record on peace issues in the world, right? Because they can't defend it. So it's this thing. My concern is queer people getting thrown under the bus. Violence against the queer community is on the rise. People's lives are literally at stake. And you, and I'm talking to any leftist out there, don't think for a minute you can have a revolution, political or otherwise, and throw the queer community under the bus. You need them. And stop it. Stop. It should not be a political issue. What somebody wants to do with their body, we say it for reproductive rights. We need to say it for trans rights. It's a personal issue. And the fact that any leftist is getting caught up in this means you're not talking about class issues. I had a post a few weeks back at the beginning of Pride, and I said, I put a picture of Nancy Pelosi in a Pride parade waving a rainbow flag. And I'm like, nice that you're waving the rainbow flag, but you know what? People in the queer community also need housing, medical care, a living wage. It is a working class issue. And it does hurt me, but I will say this. Anna and Cenk are disgusting human beings. They are not good people. This isn't just a political difference. But I have to also say, I love Jimmy Dore's critique of the Democrats, but he also is making fun of trans issues because I get it. He doesn't completely understand it. So here's my ask. Because I don't know that there's a better critic, except for you guys, of the Democratic Party out there than Jimmy Dore. Doesn't mean I agree with everything he says, but there's nobody else with that size platform that's criticizing and holding Dems accountable the way he does. And I appreciate that work. Let's leave the trans issue out of it. We don't need to talk about it in this context. We need to talk about working class issues, environmental issues, and peace issues. That's my take. And it is a near and dear issue to my heart, but I've marched with ACT UP in the 90s. These are people who walked into St. Patrick's Cathedral and spit communion out in the priest's face because queer lives were at stake. They are radical, they are willing to fight, and mostly they're working class. And I mentioned this in my post, and I'll just end on this. Trans youth are more likely to be homeless than almost any other group. We should be drawing the circle bigger and getting out of this whole language of grooming and all that bullshit. We need a working. I'm so excited about Cornel West for this reason. And by the way, he doesn't focus on that issue, but when he talks about it, he talks about his trans brothers and sisters and queer brothers and sisters. He brings them into the circle. He draws the circle bigger. He's the only candidate that really, I think, means it. But I will fight anybody who thinks they can throw a part of the working class under the bus because they don't understand it. It's just my perspective. So let's get out.
Spot on.
It's
spot on. Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah. So much good stuff said there. Especially like I had this conversation before. I gotta find that podcast I did a few weeks ago where I think it's interesting. And now this is why I'm hurt a few people's feelings, but these people don't care about hurting people's feelings, so who cares? These are people who relentlessly go after trans people and call them groomers. And I'm like, how many of you guys are Catholic saying this?
Right.
So you guys want to talk real? You guys want to get real now? You want to do facts over your feelings? Because I can do that too. I don't mention this because I think it's divisive. I don't mention religion. It's a divisive issue. So why don't they realize they doing the same regarding people's sexuality? So if you want to talk about divisive issues, let's talk about one. They shoot part of religion that is one of the biggest organizations of child sex trafficking in human history. You guys okay with that? But you guys want us to be turned off and disgusted by the LGBT community over weird allegations of grooming? And then a lot of people are like, I support the blue. I support the military. Who kills more kids in the fucking military? Who sexually assaults more kids in the military than the police? You guys support organizations that destroy children. So do not buy the narrative that these people on the right care about the children. They said that in the 80s when they first started their anti-gay crusade. They always use children because they know that's a hot button point. But they don't care about the fucking kids because they will walk over a homeless kid in a second. They will charge a kid and make them have student lunch debt. These people got a society where kids have fucking student lunch debt. But you guys think they care about the kids? No, they use that to divide you. And that's why I roll my eyes when people think they actually care about the kids and they calling other people groomers when they support the biggest organizations of child sexual violence and militaristic, actually just fucking straight out bloodthirsty violence against children when it comes to the U.S. military, when it comes for the Catholic religion. And once again, I'm not trying to hurt anyone's fucking feelings. I'm telling the truth. I'm telling the goddamn truth. Your guys' last pope helped and abetted child sex trafficking. And I'm not talking about small organization. I'm talking about the highest fucking person. But you guys calling the LGBTQ community groomers fucking miss me with that shit. Miss me with that divisive garbage. I'm not falling for it. And the people who push it, the people who care about it, they fell for it. And some of them think they're woke, but they're not. A lot of them think they're edgy and anti-establishment. I'm edgy and anti-establishment, but I talk about LGBT. You're doing exactly what the establishment wants you to do. And you're not special. You're not edgy. You follow in their direction.